Man, you guys in the community have been asking such great questions, and I love it because it allows me to find better tutorials to do with DaVinci Resolve to help as many of you as possible. I know Halloween's over. Unfortunately, we love Halloween in my neck of the woods. Megan and I love decorating for it. But up this past month, I was getting a lot of requests from the community doing like, hey, can you show how to do like the turn your eyes black like a vampire or a demon? And I thought it was a great request. It wasn't something I could really do in a short, so I figured we'd go live and do this and walk through it because it's going to involve our favorite page, Fusion, which can be, the confusion page. So that means we have to go a little slower, take our time. And I like doing this when I have you guys around to ask questions. And then in the replay, some of those questions are really important to other people who are watching along and say like, man, I had that same question. So I appreciate all of you guys being here today. And I appreciate everyone watching in the replay. And this is what we're going to do. Listen, we're going to be doing our best to actually keep DaVinci Resolve on the screen, zoom into areas and make it easy to follow along. So if you're doing this live with me right now, if you're doing it in the replay, don't be afraid to ask questions along the way about what we're doing right here. And don't be afraid to open up Resolve and kind of play along with me and learn while we're doing this, right? Because I think one of the things I really like about these live sessions is if you're on a desktop, open up Resolve, do some of the things I'm doing in real time and actually learn how to do the things we're doing nice and simple. There's our pal, Mr. Doug Hewson. Good morning, Doug. Good to see you, pal. For Doug, it's like evening. He's probably like past his bedtime. Hey, guys, it's really great to have everybody here. SMA Skies. Good to see you all. So listen, what you want to do here in Resolve, I'm going to be talking about how to replace your eye color with sort of like a black effect. And we can go really deep with this, but I'm going to start fairly simple so that you guys can get a nice, easy approach. This is sort of the next phase of Resolve. I've talked about it in two longer form videos, one long form, one live stream, and I thought I did a pretty good job of sort of introducing people to how Resolve works, especially the Fusion page, and then walked into kind of slightly deeper territory. So if you had a piece of footage that's like this, right? And as you can see, this is just, I got this from one of our sponsors, Storyblocks, pulled this off, and it's just a guy kind of staring at the camera, but clearly you can see it's a video clip. He's kind of moving in frame. It's easier to do this if the person isn't blinking. If your eyes are open, if it's you doing it, try to film yourself and keep your eyes open for the clip, because if you blink, there's a lot more masking that you have to track and follow, and it can be a little tricky. But if your eyes are wide open, it gets a little bit easier. So what you want to do is, if you have this clip here, there's two ways to get to the Fusion page. One way is you could right click and you could go open up in the Fusion page right here. See, open in Fusion page. Hold on, let me zoom in. Open in Fusion page right there. Or if you actually have your playhead over it and it's selected, you can just click over to the Fusion page and it'll open up that clip. Depending how complicated your project is, if it has several clips stacked up, it may not be as easy as that to get to. But either way, get that clip into the Fusion page. And I've talked about this before, about how the Fusion page, let me get my face out of the way here for a second. I've talked about how, basically when you're looking at these nodes down here, they're pretty simple. That media in one is sort of like just your clip itself. I always make the reference of it being like a guitar, right? If this was like a guitar situation, here would be your guitar, this would be your chord, and this would be your amplifier over here. And all this is you're thinking about what to put in between your guitar and amplifier to change the sound, maybe a little distortion, maybe a little reverb or a little echo. And that's kind of what we're doing here. So when I'm working on this, when I pull up a clip, all you're seeing is the media in, media out, and it's sort of just that clip connected back to the output with nothing attached. And they call these nodes, which is like, you kind of learn this language of Fusion. Nodes is really how you start stacking all these different things you can do with an individual clip by adding in nodes. So today, I think I've covered enough in previous videos that you should be able to have a fairly good understanding of what you want to do to get to this point of understanding at least the basics of Fusion, but we're going to go a little deeper, okay? So the very first thing I want to do is what we're going to try to do is both of these guys, this guy's two eyes, right? Both of these guys. It's only one guy, two eyes. One guy, two eyes. We want to get his left eye and his right eye, and we want to sort of mask them out and turn them into sort of a black orb eye with a little bit of reflection in it. That's the whole mission here. And we want to make sure as the person's moving in the video clip that we're tracking along so that the eyes, you know, stay right in place, and that effect that we've added tracks along with his face and feels more realistic, not like it suddenly starts going out of, you know, it starts floating off to the right. We don't need that. We want it to stay tracked in. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a merge node. And I've talked about these before. The merge node is basically just a node that allows you to connect other things in your signal path, like between the clip and the output. And if you clicked on it, it would just show up in the middle of nowhere. See how it just showed up, you know, right here? It's just sitting there, not connected to anything. That's because I didn't have anything else selected to begin with. If I undo that quickly, watch this. If I select media one, I just actually clicked on media one, the clip itself, and then I go up and I hit merge, it's going to put it in line right there because I told it the reference point. If you click something, it'll try to add it in ahead of it. So there's a couple different ways you can do it. You can either drag that merge node down and you can deconnect the cord and connect it through, or just select what you'd like to connect it to and have it drop in line. And that merge node is going to allow us to bring multiple things in because we're doing more than one eye, right? So when we're doing multiple things, we want to have the ability to merge those things in and have it all happen inside of our clip. So the very first thing that we want to do is we want to start getting one of these eyes drawn out. All right, get the color in there, get it masked out. So what we're going to do first is we're going to go up to what they call the background node, which right here, if you can see, let me see if I can get this. This one right here is the background node. There's sort of this tray. Is it not? Oh, is it not zooming in on the screen? Dang it. Oh, it's not zooming in on your side, is it? Some of the failures. Let me do this. I won't zoom. If you look right here, it's that tray of icons right below. Unfortunately, my zoom is not working on this one, so it's going to be, I'll do the best I can to stay ahead. This is just a simple background node that I'm bringing in. You should be able to see this, hopefully clear enough. Background node right there. And it's just, all that is like it's almost like a color node. It's a flat color that takes up the whole screen. With that background node selected, I'm going to go back up to this tray of icons that's just underneath the preview window, and I'm going to go over to this one over here. If you can see where my mouse is hanging on it, it's called the spline tool. It's sort of this little tray of shapes. And I'm going to click on that spline tool, and that B spline is going to connect right to the background because I had the background connected. So keep that in mind. Remember, I had selected background. Whenever I select something and then I go forward and I select something else, it's going to try to attach it to whatever node I already have selected. If I have nothing selected, it'll just stick it down in that node field, and then you can connect it to whatever you want. And there's times you're going to want to do that where you'll want to manually connect things together, and then there's times where you're like, oh no, I'd rather just click a node and go, hey, attach it to this by selecting that first node, something that you're already working with, and then selecting something else to connect to it. Am I going too fast? Is this making sense so far? I don't want to get anybody lost here, and I know that's something that can happen. All I've got here is I've got the, I wish this was zooming. It's not zooming on that end, which stinks. All I got here is the input, the merge node, the output. I've added a background node right there, and then I've attached the B spline, which is right here. It's there's a little tray. It's a square, a circle, then a couple scribblies. I just connected a B spline. Now, what this B spline does is it allows me to draw a mask. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to his eye. Let me see if I can zoom this in a little more. I believe I could, yeah. One of those little cool tricks you can do. If you're ever in Fusion, I use, I have to show you here. I use a mouse, one of these I've talked about before. It's the Logitech MX3 Mixmaster. They're not super expensive. I think they're just under $100. They have a newer Pro one that's a little more, but it's got
Hang on, Daniel disappeared for a second.
Don't hit the mouse buttons that kick you out of the studio while you're showing the mouse to the crowd. It's got all these great ergonomics, and it's got this center wheel that makes life really, really super simple for doing things like kicking yourself out of the studio if you're not careful. But I love it for editing because it allows me to do things that are more complex, like zooming into certain sections of the of what's going on inside of the Fusion window. if you notice, if you ever go over to like the edit page, it's real easy to sort of zoom in and out with a center wheel. And if you're using a trackpad, you probably have learned like the 2-finger movement and the 2-finger pinch and zoom. But if you have a mouse and you have a center wheel, it allows you to just roll that wheel and it zooms in and out. But when you go to the Fusion page, that doesn't work. The mouse wheel moves actually up and down. But if you just hit the control button and then do the zoom, it allows you to zoom in and out really, really simply inside of Fusion. And I use this a lot because Fusion is a place where you're going to be like drawing masks and doing things like that. So being able to have the scroll wheel control, if you're using PC, probably command on Mac, and then zooming in and out allows you to get super close. Then when you let go of control, you can hold down the center wheel and move things in. Get you that really great control, right? Allows you to really get way in on the image to do things like drawing a mask. Now I'm gonna select that spline, that little spline that I connected to the background node. I've only added I've added 3 nodes. I added a merge to bring everything in, but I started with a background node down here, and then I added a B-spline node attached to it. Now with that B-spline node selected, you'll see, I don't know if you can see it, I'll put it in the white of his eye. Can you see my mouse has become more like a plus button? Because that means I can start drawing in a mask. Yes, drawing, that's how we say it in New England. Put an extra R in there. And I'm gonna basically start left clicking and putting points all around the left, what I'm seeing as his left, it's his right, my left, eyeball here, just slowly drawing a mask around this eye that seems to make sense to me. And never freak out too much because you can readjust it. The most important thing is make sure when you finish your mask that you click on the first dot that you started with. If you don't completely connect the loop of a mask, you'll run into problems and go, why is my mask not working properly? And it's because you didn't close the loop. So you have to make sure when you draw a mask, go around whatever you're doing and then go back to that first dot, click it and connect it. Now I can go up here and I can grab each individual one of these spots. And if you see, I'm just slightly grabbing them on the left here. I can move them really heavy, but you can move these around. Another thing you can do is you can actually left click, hold, and draw like a box around like all the bottom ones. And now they're all highlighted and I can grab any one of them and I can pull all of it down. So when you're playing around with drawing out a mask, there's a lot of different things you can do, not only right now, but later on. So never feel like, oh, my mask isn't perfect. And you can add extra points in. You could click in between existing dots and add another one. I don't know if you can see that, but I just clicked in between 2, left click, it dropped another one. So if you ever need to do some more tweaking, don't panic. You've got a lot of flexibility, all right? So here I've drawn a kind of a simple mask, and maybe it's not hitting all the spots perfectly. Maybe it is. We can tweak that later. So there's a mask, but nothing's changed. It's just like I've drawn this line, right? Well, let me go down to that node right below it, that background one. That's what we're going to use to create the color. And if you look in the upper left up here, it's set for black. You can see the background node. I wish I could zoom in. Unfortunately, Zoom isn't working really friendly. I'll make sure I fix that for next time. But fairly simple. You can see my mouse is in the upper right. I'll just move it around there a little so you can see it. That's the background, right? It's set for black. And if I click on black, it opens up a color window, which you may or may not be able to see. It doesn't seem to be sharing that as well. But you can also do things like use the eyedropper that I do a lot, which is the eyedropper is just to the right of the color. And you can left click, hold, come on over. This you can see, and you can see the eyedropper. I can pick, instead of just using a black color, which doesn't really match the color of the footage, I'm going to start by going right into like a black part of this footage. Maybe his hairline over here is pretty black, and use a black that is more true to the black in the color grading of this footage, instead of me putting in solid black. And you can tell it looks more like a gray now over here in the upper right instead of black. And that's cool. And I can click on that and I can still adjust it a bit. It's not showing that quite as much as I'd like, of course, but I can adjust that later. And all that is done is it's picked the color. But you haven't seen any change yet, right? You haven't seen any change. Well, if I have this merge node down here. If I take this little square on the outside of the background and connect it, watch what happens. Boom, there's my black. Right, it wasn't connected. I hadn't merged the black color and the little mask that I made around his eye. I hadn't connected those yet, so you didn't see the black. So that's what the merge node does, brings it down in, connects it all in line, then says, hey, here's your original image. Here's the mask and the color black that we'd like to add inside of that mask, and then we send it out. Now, right here, it's a little choppy, if you can see this at all. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. It's a little choppy around the edge, right? A little pixelated. That could be because my footage may not be high enough res, or how I have the playback resolution set may not be totally giving us everything we need. But one thing you can do is, if you click on that B spline, which is what I use to draw the mask, and then you see when I click it, can you see how the mask shows up again? Let me grab one of the dots so you can see it out of place. See, that mask is back in place. And remember how I told you could adjust it later on? You can always come back in and move some of these dots, zoom way in, tweak it however you want if you think you need to add an extra dot and make it do things if it's not quite doing what you want it to. This is where you can do all of that. But it's still got a bit of a weird edge. Well, up in the upper right, you see that you can't quite see it here. I really wish I could zoom on this, but it's got a section that says right here, soft edge. And I can actually dial that up. I'm going to dial it up a lot to show you. If I spin it up, it like super soft edges it. Really blurs out the edge. I'm just going to bring it up a tiny, tiny bit. Just the littlest amount I can. Like it's 0.016. And it just softens the edge a little bit so that it's not like pixelated. And that can really help when you're trying to get something to blend in. Let me click away to something else. Like, see, now you don't see quite as much pixelation in his eye. It sits in there a little bit better. And I can always grab that background node again, go up to the color, and I can change the color. I've actually got a color window that's not showing up, but you can change the intensity. It's just a typical color window. I can get lighter, I can get darker. And all I'm doing is slightly modifying the color of that blackness of his eye. You can do all of this. Everything in Resolve here always allows you to sort of keep going and changing as you go if you have to tweak something a little bit. But that's all I've done is I've sat here, created a mask, put in the color black, and merged it in so it's incorporated into the image of this guy for one eye. Everybody with me so far? Everybody see what we're doing here. Give me a thumbs up if so far you go, kind of get this. It's not too tricky. Wish your Zoom was working, Daniel, but I think I'm following along. If that's okay, give me a thumbs up if it makes sense. If you have any questions at this point, something I'm missing or I went too quickly on that didn't make sense, just jump out and ask it in the chat. I'm happy to have Megan put those questions up, and we can dive a little deeper into something that maybe I went over too quickly and didn't make sense. But it's a fairly simple connection of just a couple of nodes, color, a mask, merge it in, boom. We've added a little bit of black on there, right? Okay, so we've got a thumbs up, we've got a thumbs up, and we've got a creepy. It is kind of creepy. I will admit it. That's the whole thing, right? Very creepy. It gets black. It gets black in here. We're gonna get a little. Look at this. Perfect. I love it. Okay, but one thing that we're not seeing right now, let me do this. I'm gonna grab where the background node connects into the merge. I'm gonna left click and disconnect it. Now I've turned off the black eye, right? Because that's not connected into the merge anymore. But it's still there, but I'm doing that for a reason. I want to show you something. When you look at an eye, let me grab right here. Can you see that inside of an eye, up here, you see this like reflection? Your eyes, because they're glossy, they reflect light in like a room or whatever, whatever light source might be shining on that person. So you tend to see those light reflections in an eye. And that's one of the things that helps give it like that roundness and that contour, is being able to see reflections in your eye. Now, here's something we want to incorporate into our black eyeball effect, is like a reflection to get it to feel like some of that light from the room is hitting this round object and reflecting some of that light back. Good, lots of thumbs up. Everybody seems to be going, okay, kind of got it, kind of with you. Okay, so far, haven't lost anybody. Great. Okay, so what we're going to do is we want to create that little like reflection that we get. And what we're going to do, you're going to start seeing, this will look complicated for someone who came in at the very end, but if you walk along this, it's going to make a ton of sense. If you want to add another color in a small area, you just do the exact same thing we did, right? Do you see what we did with this background and spline that I'm now moving around? Okay, we just need to do another one of those, but we need to create the reflection to layer on top of it. So I go back up to the left of this tray and I bring down another background node. And on that background node, I select it, right? Make sure it's surrounded in a little bit of color. And then I go just above it and I click on that B spline option and add another spline. That's that nice masking tool that sort of rounds all the connection points that we use to do the whole eyeball. And now with that second B spline selected down here in the node area, I'm just going to kind of draw what I think is kind of the reflection area. And again, I can modify some of this afterwards. Make sure you close your loop. That's so important. Let me move this closer so you can see it. Make sure that you always connect back to your last dot, and you can change these, right? You know, someone could argue, how big should I go farther? I'm going to grab like the main area here that's kind of almost like a, you know, like a hot dog shape or a pickle shape, cucumber, and go, okay, there we go. Now I'm also going to say, well, I want to also grab the color that's a reflection. So we can start with the same thing we did. Let's select this new background node right here. Let's go to the upper right and let's grab right next to the color tool. Let's grab that eyedropper by left clicking and holding and bringing it over. And let's put it like right in the middle of the lightest part of that reflection. And now what'll happen is, let's use the same technique. Get this merge node. I'm going to grab the second background node and just connect it to the merge so you can see it. And I don't know if you see it get brighter. It's just a little, if I take it away, it goes away. All I've done is I've kind of stolen that and created that reflection, just a little blurb of reflection, right? And if I zoom out a little bit, you can kind of see it a little bit better. See, this is with it not connected. Let me connect it again. Boom. There we go. So we have two sections. We have the dark of the eyeball that we've created in mask. That's this section over here. Then we have this second section we've created, which is another little mask with a lighter color that's going to be the reflection on top of the eyeball. But now we need to put those together and bring it into the merge. Now you might think, this is where sometimes Resolve takes a little bit of learning, especially in Fusion, that you just connect everything to the merge and then it's done. Well, the problem is we're going to be doing two different eyes, two layers of black, two layers of reflection, one for each eyeball. And that's a lot of things to merge into a single merge node. We actually want this one eye to be its own sort of separate thing that we've built. So surprisingly enough, let me just grab these and move them down a little bit. What we actually want to do is grab another merge node that's right here in the upper shelf, bring it down and put it there. So basically I'm going to connect the black and the highlight of that we're going to put on top of the black, merge them together, and then bring them both together into this main merge node, merge node to create that one eyeball. Is this making sense? I'm just going to use a separate merge node to collect all these little pieces for the one eye, group them all together, call them an eyeball, and then we're going to bring it in. And I can even do that. You can even change the name of these merge nodes and put like left eyeball, right eyeball. You have all those options to rename these by right-clicking on them and changing things. Do whatever you want. I'm just going to leave them as they are for now. But one thing you definitely want to be careful of is, I've talked about this in the past, these nodes have all different arrows on them and they actually mean different things. The yellow one on the left is actually the background merge, and the green one on the top is the foreground merge. So when I connect the black, I want to go, okay, let me put the black on first. That should go to the yellow. Yes, it popped to the top. Don't worry about it. That's one of the things Fusion does. It'll always change to the path of least resistance. If I actually move this way, you'll see it's still connected to yellow, but it moved the yellow marker to the side. Don't let that throw you off. It'll move those markers around based on just location to keep the lines as short as possible. But that's connected to the background. I want to take the reflection part and I want to put it over the black, right? I don't want the black to hide the reflection. I want the reflection that we created in the eyeball to sit on top of the black. So that needs to be connected to the foreground part of this merge. So it goes into the green. So that's all I've done is I've merged those two layers together and said, hey, keep the black part, the eyeball in the back, and layer the reflection on top. And then if I come out of this merge to the other merge and bring it in, now you'll see I have both. Can you see how I have both of these here now? It has the black of the eyeball. Let me just zoom in a little bit here. You can see everything a little bit more. And if I click on the spline separately, you'll see I have all this control. There's the black, right? This one here actually has a control. You can actually move it. It's way down here. You can move that whole black eyeball out of the way. Let's not do that. Let's leave it where it is. And then you can see if I click on the other spline, it's got a little circle right here. So those are those two separate layers brought in saying, keep the black in the background. We did that with this second merge node. Keep the black in the back, keep the main image all the way in the back, add a black layer that's going to be masked to the eyeball, then add a little highlight layer that's going to be on top of the black. So all we've done is we've created this whole section. That's just an eyeball. That's all that is. Everything right here is just the eyeball we're seeing on what we're calling his left side, his right side, what we're seeing on the left. Does that make sense? Does that all seemingly make sense of what we've done? All we started main image, added some black, added some reflection, merged them together, and then brought them into our main merge to create this eyeball effect. Thumbs up if you're still with me. Thumbs down or questions if I've lost you in any way. I want to make sure that you guys stay with me here, because a lot of this, once you start adding a lot of nodes, can feel really confusing. But in fact, it's not very confusing at all. It's just repetitive. And when you see all the nodes and you don't understand what they are right off the bat, then you go, oh my gosh, that's so confusing. But then when you've actually built your way up and you understand what each one does, you go, oh, okay, I get it. That looks complicated because there's a lot of nodes. But if I know what the nodes do, a lot easier to follow along, right? Okay, we've got a thumbs up, we've got a yes, we've got a simple thumbs up. Good, everybody's with me. Wait, what's that? What's that one right there? Oh, that's like a droopy eyes. We even got a mahala. Okay, good. So everyone understands where we're at. Cool. Now, what I need you to understand is looking at this. Yeah, Tony, that's absolutely true. That's my main worry with Fusion, is all the different nodes. He calls them bodes. I trust me, my typing is worse than yours, Tony. Yes, learning all the different nodes. That's why I try to do these lessons. Let's just learn simple ones and learn how to use them in a technique. And then as you start figuring out what it is you want to build, you can go, oh, I need to learn a separate node and a different trick to do that. And you'll just naturally start learning them, and you'll remember them from another lesson. Hopefully after doing this, you'll go, oh, I remember how to do, like, replace a color on screen if I want to mask something out and change the color. You could do this with simple things like just like the center of your eye, and change the color of just like your pupil or something if you wanted to. So it's all just learning simple, straightforward kind of techniques. So that right there, everything I have selected right here, that's just the black with the reflection on it. We've created a black eyeball. Got it? Okay. Now, this is very simple. I'm going to disconnect that eyeball. I'm going to grab them all. I'm just going to move them over to the left. Right? You can left click and draw a box around them. It selects all of them, and then you can kind of move them out of your way. I'm going to leave that over there for now. Now, guess what we're going to do? We're just going to do the other eye. We're just going to do the other eye. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click my center wheel. This would be a 2-finger pinch for people on a trackpad. I'm going to slide this over, and we're literally going to do the exact same thing. We're going to do the exact, because it's just another eye. So we'll start with, let's go, I'm going to do it to the right. So for in my brain, I want everything over on the left to be that eyeball on the left, and then I'll build the right eyeball to the right. So when I look at nodes, I'll go, okay, that one corresponds to that side of the screen. That one corresponds to the right side of the screen, because that's the way my new brain works. It has to make sense visually to me. So the first thing I'm going to do is deselect all these nodes. I'm going to grab another background node and bring it over to the right. And with that node selected, I'm going to go back up and hit that B-spline tool again. That makes that nice curved mask. And with that selected, I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to start drawing around this other eye, this one on the other side. And I'm going to have to cheat a little here. He's got a lot of white skin kind of, in his eyelid that I might have to sort of block out to make it look more realistic. Again, make sure you always end up clicking that very first dot again to complete the circle of your mask, or they won't work right. Sometimes they'll look like they're completed and you just missed by a fraction. And you go, how come my mask isn't working right? Nothing's disappearing. Then you zoom in, you go, oh, I didn't connect it all the way. I thought I did. I didn't have it zoomed in and I missed by a little. So now I've got this mask, right? Let me just move this over a little bit, move in a little bit. So I've got this mask, and I can grab some of these dots and go, maybe I need to add another dot here and there. I need to do a little bit of adjusting. If you notice where the dots are, if you look at this lower right, even though the dot is out, that B-spline will always try to curve a little bit, which is really, really easy to make sure that you don't completely blow it. You don't throw it off, because it softens all the edges. Is this what's that white little arrow for? That's my mouse. That's my cursor. That white little arrow, I think that's what you're talking about. That's just my mouse cursor on screen inside of the preview window. So I'm just using my mouse to grab these points, move things around. And I think that's, maybe kind of close. Let me zoom out a little bit. We can tweak this later on. So now that I have that done, right, I can go to the color, the background node, just below it, just like we did on the other side. And I can pick a color on screen again. I can go, oh, here's the color. You can actually steal the color from the other one if you want, but I'm just going to quickly grab a black and make it similar. Okay, and when I connect this, I can drop it back down into the merge node. There's my other eyeball, right? Oh, there it is. I see it now. Pretty cool, right? Like, oh, okay. As long as I connect it to the merge, I can see what I've done. And remember how we did that thing before too? We grabbed the spline and we went up to the upper right soft edge and just made a little softer by dialing that upper right soft edge out. Here's a quick little trick. I have the spline tool selected. And with the spline tool selected, you can see the mask around the eyeball. Let me see. Let me zoom in a little bit. You can see the mask around this eyeball. And I have the spline tools in the upper right selected so that I can adjust that spline, that mask. But sometimes that green line, the mask itself, gets a little in the way. If you just click in the gray area down here somewhere in the nodes area and deselect the spline, as long as you still have the spline up here in the upper right inspector, you can still control it. So I can start to bring that softness up and it'll take that mask line out of the way so you can see it a little better, because sometimes seeing the mask gets in the way of what you're trying to do. But as long as you're in the upper right inspector and using the tools for the node that you just selected, and you turn that off, it'll defer to that last one you were at. So we can just soften the edge. That's way too soft. I just want to bring it up like the littlest amount. I could type in a value, but I'm going to go with whatever the first, it looks like 0.016, if I can get on it, right about there. All I'm doing is just taking away some of that pixelation so that it's a little more solid down here. And if I were to, if I were going to try to connect the other merge right now, you would see, would it let me do it? I think no, it's going to overwrite it because it can't find that spot. So you can see, I'll show you how to solve that. We need to add that second merge node again. So I'm going to do the exact same thing. Disconnect this for a second. What I want is to create the reflection on top of the eyeball on the right side. So we're building this exact same thing just for the other side. So let's grab another background node, bring it down there. With it selected, let's hit the B spline tool again, right there underneath your preview window. And then with that, this zoomed in, again, I'm using Control and Center Wheel. You could do that with Command, I believe, and a 2-finger pinch should do it, I believe. I'll have to try that out on the trackpad. And now I'm going to just draw another, I'm going to replicate one of the reflections here. I don't know. We'll see. I'm going to go choose this one. I might adjust this later and find out that it doesn't look as good as I want. Again, make sure you click back on that last, the first keyframe, the first marker you put in your mask. Make sure it makes a complete circle. And then I'm going to select the background color node for the reflection, which is right here. And up in the upper right, I'm going to left click on the eyedropper and go right in the middle of whatever the lightest part of that reflection is and turn it into that. Now, just like on this section before, remember we had to add another merge node, make sure we added the black layer and then the reflection on top of it. We're just duplicating that exact same thing. So I'm going to go up and I'm going to grab a merge node and I'm just going to bring it down here. And I'm going to make sure that the black part of the eye connects to the background. And again, remember how it moves it around? Yeah, if I move it over. Yellow is the background. Green, you can't see this, but if you hover on it on your screen, it'll actually say foreground and background. For some reason, my StreamYard's not playing nice and picking that up with this for whatever reason today. Thank you a lot, StreamYard. But we're going to connect the reflection part to the foreground. Now we have basically two identical eyes here. Let me scroll out. Yeah, let me scroll out. Control, okay. Here we have two eyes. This is left eye. This is right eye. Now what we can do is we can bring these down into this merge node. And we should be able to, let me see if I can connect it properly. We got to do foreground. And you have to get you out of the foreground. Hold on a second. Oh, I want to get a transform node. Hold on one second. But I basically have each node. There's your left eye, and here is your right eye. So we got both. And you can see there's a reflection up there. We've got that one. And we've got a reflection here. Perfect. So now we have all of these together. What we want to do now is we need to be able to create, one of the things we don't have going on right now is I've got this selected, masked, and drawn in there, but it's only drawn right here. If you can't really see it too well, my playhead is a little red marker is in the middle of this. And if I started playing this footage, I've only created a mask at this point. I've only added black at this point. What I haven't done is created the eyes and done it in a way that allows it to follow and track along with it. So we've created the color, we've created the reflection. What we haven't done is tracked this and made it move with our main footage and stay with the same shape. Now this is where it gets a little funky. I think everyone can see, like, we've got, okay, 2 different eyes that we've created. There's one, there's the other one you created, Daniel. I see it. Perfect. Life is great. Wonderful, right? So what we want to do here is we need to add a tracking node. And the type of tracking node we're going to use is called a planar tracker. I don't know if this window will show up, but I do it by hitting shift and spacebar. If it wants to work with me. No, it does not. 1 second. We can also find it up in the, oops, hold on a second. Hold on 1 second. Shift. Doesn't want to add in. Hold on. Keyboard is not cooperating today. We can find it in our tools menu as well. Why is it freezing up on me? Well, it seems like we have frozen. It seems like DaVinci Resolve has decided to freeze on me. No wonder it's not acting up. That happens sometimes, especially when you're running 900 things at once. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to restart this, okay? And hopefully we haven't lost it. Everyone can have this happen, right? When you're live streaming and you're running things all at once, sometimes the software freezes up on you and it has glitches. So I'm going to quickly restart it. We'll see if it's saved where we were at. So give me 1 sec. Oh, hold on a second. I see what's going on. It did not freeze up. Ha ha. Okay. Welcome to my world. Welcome to my world. You want to see what happened? I told you I was working with a diminished brain capacity today. Here's what happened. I now currently have new systems built in here. And one of the things I did with all the cool DaVinci Resolve gear that they sent is I built that studio over there, which has a giant 40-inch curved screen and all the new cool color gear. When I chose that option, all it did is it threw it onto the other monitor, and it was waiting for me to go over there and catch it because it's on a different monitor. It's going, Daniel, just your selection tool is there. It's just way over there. This is why I tell you, I am the head noob in charge. I'm still constantly learning about, like, hey man, it's just, there's different things that happens when you use different monitors and screens. And, I learned by making mistakes. And the mistake was it decided to throw it onto a different monitor and I couldn't see it in front of me. It wasn't frozen, just had the selection tool. Let me open this back up so we can see it. Now you can't see it right now. I don't know why it's not sharing it, but there's a selection tool. I apologize. And it's just a menu that we're going to type the word planar tracker into. You'll see it. If you hit shift and spacebar, it's going to open up this menu. I wish it would show that. I don't know why it's deciding not to show the overlays. Something going on with StreamYard today. But I'm going to type in the word planar tracker, PLANAR. I've talked about this before. I'm going to add it in. And it's added that planar tracker at the end. I actually don't want it at the end. I actually want it. I'm going to stick it in between the merge and the output for now. Let me reconnect that. And so right here. And that is a tracking device that'll allow me to track the main footage. Okay, I've just decided to put it behind the merge. That'll work for me right now. And if you have a planar tracker selected, it's a lot like the spline tool that allows you to select areas. It's kind of like a mask, but you have to tell it what you're paying attention to. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the left side, and I'm just going to kind of draw around the eye. You don't have to do that super detailed, trace the eye. I'm just going to try to get the area around the eye and say, I want to track sort of what's going on his face in this region. And with that planar tracker selected right there in the upper right, you have some options that you can change the type of tracker it is. It starts as point. Sometimes I change point over to the hybrid point area. Just has a sort of a broader reach. And also it's set for the motion type as perspective. Perspective sometimes works that you can change, depending on your footage, it might work better. If there's another option here for the transition, rotation, and scale, it's just telling it how you want it to track. And if the person starts turning or moving too much, you might find different tracking types when you use the tracker, the planar tracker, get a better feeling for what's going on. One big thing you do have to pay attention to, and this gets confusing, all we're doing is we're just trying to track the main footage so that when we tell the eyeball to follow it, it has a point of reference. So when the main footage moves or he turns his head, the eyeball stays right in line with it. When we have these black eyeballs, are going to do that thing, okay? This gets super, super techie and weird. I get it. But that's where some of these nodes can, this is why a lot of people think Fusion gets confusing, because you have to, up until this point, you went, I got it. You built two eyeballs. Well, how are you going to get them to follow your main footage? Well, now you have to add a planar tracker, and you have to put it in the main line of the main footage, because that's what you want your eyeballs to follow, the main footage. Does this make sense okay right now, what we're doing, what we're paying attention to, what I've done, adding it outside of me putting planar tracker onto a different monitor and having to go find it? Does this make sense to you guys? Please, again, thumbs up, thumbs down. We're at the point now where we've made the two eyeballs and the reflections. We just need them to follow the footage, because right now we've only assigned it to one specific frame in the footage. We haven't told it follow the entire footage. And when the footage changes, goes back, goes forward, make the eyes do the same thing, right? That's all we're trying to do, is tell it to pay attention to the main footage. Got a thumbs up, got a yep. Yeah, cool, awesome. It seems to be like you see what we're doing. Yes, cool. So that's all we're going to do now, guys, is we're just going to try to track the footage so that the eyeballs can follow the footage. This one, and when the man blinks, this is why I said you would literally have to go in and adjust this to change with his eyeball if he blinks, which is why try to get footage where someone's not blinking. It's going to work a lot better. Learn this first, get this down so that you can build this 18 times a day without making a mistake, and then you can start figuring out how to get the blink, where you're literally going to go in. Remember, I showed you how to adjust the mask. You can tweak that mask later on, but don't overcomplicate it now. Don't start thinking about, when you're just learning to drive a car, don't ask what you do in turn 3 of the Indy 500. Go, wait, you're not there yet. I never want to overcomplicate it. Learn the simple basics of what, this is still fairly complicated, right? This is a fairly complicated Fusion process, but you can do even more, because Fusion will go on forever. It'll go as deep as you want, but don't get too technical and too complicated. Keep it nice and grounded. Learn the basics, right? Get that down in your pocket where you can do it any day of the week. And when you know you can do that, then making it blink is going to be so much easier, instead of trying to learn, 9 million things at once. All right. Yeah, definitely. Just try to go slow with me. Take it one step at a time. And I appreciate that. I do try to explain things in an understandable way, but Fusion's tricky. So, and especially right now where my zoom isn't working, I'll get that working for next time. It's a little harder when I can't zoom right into stuff the way I want. It's working on my screen, but for some reason StreamYard doesn't like it. We might be moving to Ecamm very quickly here, my friends. Another new sponsor we've been talking to. So anyway, you can see what I've done. I've added this planar tracker in here in that main footage line, because I want to say we got to be able to follow what the main footage does. Now, up in the upper right, there is this option here that's kind of hard to see because I can't zoom, but it says there's a little option to track. That's just a tracker. But it has a reference time, and it's set for 0, which would be fine if my playhead was all the way back at the beginning, but it's not. It's at the middle. So we have to hit this little button that says set. And all that does is it sets the marker to say, hey, right now his playhead has started in the middle of the footage, so set the tracking for the same place as the playhead is right now. Because otherwise, if you did it from the beginning and just hit go, it would give you a warning window that popped up that says, I can't track this. There's no reference point there. So you have to make sure you set it for wherever your playhead is, because I happen to be in the middle of the footage right now. And once I set it, then I can go down below this tracking section and I can track. I can hit the backwards button right here. This is the backwards button, and it'll start. Watch it. See how that quickly followed his eye? Happened really quick, right? And then I can track forward. That's the one over here. And I can track forward and watch. See how it's just following that? Did you see that happen? It just quickly followed and tracked his face. So now that planar tracker has gathered all these little information points. Let me do this. I can go control one. No, that doesn't let me do that. Hold on. That I can do it here. Control, I can zoom that one in for you. And if you look, you see all these little tracking points. They look like little green lines and stuff. That's just the mask moving with the footage and studying and analyzing how the footage moves and making sure the mask is moved with it. And this is actually under this whole timeline here. There's all these little key, little white dots that have now been added, like little white lines that are all just tracking points to tell the software at this point where the mask should be. And it just tracked his motion. Nice and simple. So we did that. So now we have the tracking information. How do we apply the tracking information to the eyeball? How do we get the eyeball to do that? Now watch here. Let's go like this. In the upper right here, there are some options. And there's one at the very bottom that says create planar transform. Okay, bear with me. Some of you may have watched some of my other Fusion tutorials. And if you have an item that's in Fusion and you want to make it move, you want to do something, you add a transform node. And a transform node allows you to change the size, the position, move things around. Well, as confusing as this may be, the planar tracker just gathers the information from the main footage. But if you want to apply that information to something else, you need to create a planar transform node that takes the information and says, here it is in a nice little package, apply it to something else like a black eyeball. Okay, so when we're here down in this section, what I want to do is go up with the planar tracker node selected, and I want to click on create planar transform. It's a planar transform node. And you can't really even see it. It's right above I have to move the screen. It threw it way up here. Let me go up a little bit. Way up here. Let's bring that down. I'm going to bring it down because I just tracked his eyeball that's on our left. So I'm paying attention to the left, okay? So now I've got this going. Now I'm going to do this. I can actually take this planar tracker node and I can actually take it right out of the equation. I've already got the information. It's just an information node. I can throw it up to the side and I can reconnect the main merge. And this planar tracker node, that's just the one that gathered the information. It's this planar transform node that takes that information and applies it to your project, okay? And I tracked the left eye. So now if I connect the merge node from the left eye information that we built, the black and the reflection, and then connect the transform down into the merge, you'll see that black eyeball has been applied. But anybody noticing anything right here? Anybody seeing something that's problematic? It's like, wait a second, that doesn't look like it's right over his eye properly, isn't it? That looks like it's off. There's actually right up in the upper right, while you have the planar transform node selected, there's this little box that says scale to scene. It's right here. It's a little tiny check mark. Make sure you turn that off. Do you see what just happened? Now the eyeball's where it should be. If you have that, it's on by default. And I was playing around with this earlier, trying to figure out how to do this technique. I'm like, why is the black not lined up right? And it's a stupid thing. It just changes the scale. Turn that off and make sure it's in the right place. All right. Make it goes up there. Now, when we go back to the beginning of our footage, that should follow the footage. You see what's going on there? You see how I just played through that footage and the black eyeball, the left one, stayed with it. It's like, oh, wait a minute, it's there. But I'm starting to see some things here that I don't, hold on. What did I just do? I just disconnected everything. Hold on a sec. Wait a second, reconnect. I'm disconnecting the world here. I accidentally hit the undo button. There we go. Okay. But I'm starting to see things when I'm looking at this. If I go control and I go in, I'm actually seeing, can you guys see this? This is why I love Resolve. I'm actually seeing a little bit of his eyeball above the black eyeball. Right in there, I can see a little bit of the white, and I can see a little bit of the eyeball, a little more of the white. I'm like, oh man, the shape wasn't as good as I thought it was. This is why I tell you, don't freak out if something's not right. You can always go back and adjust. So let's think this through. Let's think this through carefully, okay? Let me reorganize some of this stuff so it makes sense. The planar tracker is just the information. I'm going to put that to the side. All of this is the right eyeball. All of this is the left eyeball. The planar transform node we just added, that one right there, that's the one that's just sending the information to tell it how to move with the footage. So that's your entire left eyeball, black with the little reflection on top. And this is telling it to move with the rest of the main footage, all merged in. So if we went, wait a minute, there's a problem with the black on the eyeball. It's a little bit low. all you need to do is go, well, what did I use to create the shape of the black in the eyeball? Oh, that was the very first thing I did. It was right here. It was that black background with that bees spline tool that drew the circle, right? So I would go and select that spline, and I could go, you know what? I'm going to box all the top so that I'm selecting all of, see how those are all yellow now? And I'm going to click any one of them and move them all up a little bit. I'm just going to move them up. It's showing a little bit too much of the top of the eyeball is peeking through the original eyeball. Now, once I've done that, because I've now moved that again, it can maintain that through this footage. But you have to, because I did it right there, you want to make sure that you retrack some of this stuff and make sure it does what it should. So just be careful that if you do lose any of the tracking, let me click out of there, that you may have to retrack it. And if I go back over here, let's see how much of it, if we've been able to track, it's still a little bit off. So we may have to, if you get into that area, like I said, where let me move it here, that it's not quite right and you had to adjust, remember that you may have to retrack because you're changing basically for one frame, right? Right here. So that's where my playhead is. So if I go, man, I need to be a little higher, don't be afraid to go back and retrack this again. And the way we tracked it was that planar tracker. So we can actually go, oh, okay, hold on a second, reconnect that for a second. I need it for a minute. And I actually want to retract that properly and make sure that it's tracking set for the proper keyframe. And I want to make sure that I retrack all of this so it follows properly and it does exactly what it should. So if you have to do a little tweaking on your tracking, don't be surprised. No big deal. You can always readjust things and correct for whatever you need along the way. But basically, it's real simple. That's all we did is we now have that, I have that selected. We now have one eyeball that's kind of following along with a reflection. See, black, reflection. That makes sense. I know this kind of gets tricky. Let me see. Question. Hi, isn't it better to stabilize than fix the eye? No, because if you stabilized, that's basically you're saying stabilizer just takes the shake out. But in any real piece of footage, if someone's like moving around in an area, they're going to move, right? So stabilizing doesn't always help. Like that, I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with this footage. The camera's moving a little bit. I might like the camera motion. So the goal isn't to make the footage not move. The goal is to make sure that the eyeball follows the footage no matter what the footage does. Now, yes, if you've got super shaky footage that's all over the place, I would say, man, either film that again because I think you missed the shot, or I would try to stabilize a little bit. But this isn't a whole lot of shake. This is just normal camera movement that you'll see in any movie. You know, these guys on these giant gimbals, they don't get perfect stabilized shots from a tripod, they move. So when you're doing any kind of effect and the person might be moving in the shot, they're never gonna be stable. You're gonna have to track. So it's really about learning how to get it to track and follow the way you want. Does that make sense, Lonely Artist? Good question though, it's a really good question. Yeah, it's a really good one. I totally agree with SMA Skies. Shakes makes it more realistic. If it was stabilized, it might look like a photo, right? It might take all the motion out of it, and you're like, well, now it's just a picture. So that's why we're trying to think about how to get this eye. That's all we've done right now. We built an eye, right? We built an eye, and we connected it through a merge node into a planar transform and into another merge node. Does all of this make sense? Let's ignore all of this for right now. Let's take it out of the way. Actually, this one we can bring back over. This is our main footage in. This is the darkness of the eye with the mask we made. This is the reflection of the eye with a mask that we made. We merged them together in here. We created a planar tracker that tracked the main footage. And then we created a planar transform that we stuck inline here. And now this entire eyeball that's merged together has a planar transform that tells it how to move with your main footage. And then it adds it all back into the main line, the main guitar to amp signal path. Is this way too confusing, or are you kind of with me? Do you kind of understand that what we built here was an eyeball, tracked the main footage, added it in, told it to follow that tracker, not only got the tracking information, but made a transform node that told the eyeball to follow what the tracker had learned and merged it back in. I know it looks like a lot of nodes right now, but do we kind of see what's happening here? Are we okay? Tech Reality says, got it, thumbs up. Oh my God, X Kodak Cam X. I'm going to call it Kodak Cam. The X's are just optional. It says yes. SMS guys, yes. All right, cool. So we're kind of seeing how it's kind of making sense, right? Gabriel says, yep, okay, I kind of get that. It looks like a lot of nodes though, right? If you saw this on screen and you hadn't known how we got here, you'd go, oh my gosh, Daniel, like, what am I doing here? That's just nodes everywhere. What do they all mean? But once you understand building from the ground up, and you see it and you go, well, that's what that did. Now it makes sense. And I've taught in the previous ones that you can change the name of all of these different nodes. So instead of seeing words like background, you could change it to left eye. And you can even do things like collapse them. You could take the entire section here. You could click on that, and you could actually turn that into like a singular box. I don't want to collapse it now, but you can turn them all. It'll collapse it into a single node, and you could just call it left eye. And you don't even have to look at all those separate nodes and confuse yourself once you got it where you want it. And then you can uncollapse it afterwards and get back into it. But you'll see that sometimes too, what looks like a bunch of stacked nodes, and they just collapsed them to make the viewpoint look a little easier to follow. Okay, so that's what we have. This tracker was working for this eyeball over here. So that's what we got. So what's the next thing we have to do is just repeat it, right? Here's the other eyeball. This is the eyeball that's going to go just on the one above it, right? So the very same thing we do is we want to add in another planar tracker. So I go shift space, which then puts the planar tracker on my other screen. I've learned to bring it back over. I wish you could see it. It's just a little drop-down tools menu. You'll see it when you got it. And I'm going to type in planar tracker, which it still has typed in, and I'm going to hit add. And if I hit add, it adds this planar tracker, PLANAR tracker. That tracks sort of all the movements, front, back, tilt. It's a good tracker. It's great for something like this. It has a lot of motion. I love when I get this many thumbs up. I get it. Cool. And I get the rock fist from One Beer Films, who has an awesome channel name. One Beer Films. Okay. So here's our planar tracker. Now we just got to do the same thing for that other silly eyeball. All right. Let me disconnect. I'm just going to disconnect the left eyeball so it doesn't distract us from what we're doing. It's all right there. It's all set. Here's that other planar tracker. Okay. I'm going to take this planar tracker with it selected. I'm going to go up and I'm going to do the same thing we did on the left eye to the right eye. I'm just going to draw really big around it. Make sure I connect back to the original dot. Just that whole space. It actually helps if you go like out a little bit, grab the eyelid and the eyelash and the eyebrow, and because that little more space actually helps the tracker understand the motion of the face better, not just the eye. So you could even go broader. You could go up into his hairline, down to his cheek, but I usually just go, kind of around the eye seems to have worked. And as we've done before with the planar tracker, I got to go up to the upper right. And where it says track, you can't really see it, but right up here, I have to set it for where my playhead is because it defaults to 0. Remember, it's going to default way back to the beginning. And if I try to track, it's going to go, I can't track. I've got no information there. So we have to set it for where the playhead is. And again, you can change point as the default. I've been using the hybrid point, and I've been changing the motion type to transition, rotation, and edge. And you'll find that some of those, like I said, work better for you. Don't be afraid to change the tracker type and the motion type for the footage you have. Sometimes one will work great, and then you have a different type of footage where it moves a little bit differently. The camera might spin, and you go, oh, it's not capturing all the rotation and the motion. So you might have to change the flow so it can better understand the motion of the footage. And then once you've done that, the same thing we do up here, just below here in this section, I'm going to track backwards, and it will hopefully, oh, jeez, it won't track. This is a noob mistake. What didn't I do? I didn't connect it in line to the main footage. I'm drawing up on screen, but I didn't connect it. You got to connect it. You got to connect it in line. There's a noob mistake. See, I make mistakes too. That tracker needs to be in line like we had it before. It actually has to be plugged in between the guitar and the amplifier. So I just stuck it back in between the merge node. Make sure it's set for the right frame. Now I can track backwards. See, now it's tracking with it. And then I'm going to go see it's backwards, and right here is a pause stop button, and then a forward. Watch the motion as I hit track forward. It'll just stay all around that eye, making reference points. Now I've got that tracking information. So now this planar tracker has absorbed the motion and understood, all right? So now I don't need that planar tracker like we did before. What I need is a planar transform. I need it to take the information it just gathered and turn it into a transform node that can move other things like the other eyeball we just made. So with the planar tracker node selected, I'm going to go back to the very bottom and say create a planar transform node. it stuck it way up here, right up here out of nowhere. Why? Why not? I'll bring that back down. I'm going to disconnect this planar right here. I don't really actually, the planar tracker, because once it's got the information, it doesn't need to stay in line anymore. I can set it off and go, you are the information for this eyeball, and you got me all the information to track for this eyeball. I've got this planar transform. I'm going to connect to that. Now, if I connect back through and I connect this merge, right? I go, okay, well, there's my, there's that left eye. If I try to connect the other one, it sort of overwrites it because it's not connecting to the right space. So one thing we can do is just add one more merge node down here. And I'll click and add another merge node. And let's connect to a separate merge node. And what are we seeing right off the bat, right? Now, I've just duplicated this, right? There's your left eye with everything, all the information. Here's your right eye with all the information. But the left eye is where we want it to be. And the right eye is like a, you know, like a what do they call that? A wandering eye, drifting eye. It's just going off, it's just wandering off the face. It's that same thing you want to pay attention to. When you click the planar transform node, you got to go up and turn off the scale to source. You got to leave that off. And did I even track it well? I may not have even tracked it well. It's a little bit off here. I've lost some of the source. I'm going to make sure that we got that tracking right. I'm going to move this back where it should be. There's a little dot here. Let me make sure that that's tracking the way it should. Okay, there we go. Do you see what I have going on here? I had that a little bit off. This right here, can you see what I'm highlighting here? That's the control for the black B-spline. Here's the black spline. That's for the blackness of the right eyeball. And it was a little off. I was like, damn it, it was like floating over here. I can drag that back in, and as long as I reposition it, it'll follow right along with the entire tracking that we just did, and it'll make the adjustment and go, oh, the whole thing was off a little to the left or the right. And let me just deselect it so you're not seeing that B-spline. I don't want to see that. And now what we kind of have here, let me kind of zoom out a little bit, is a guy with kind of, I haven't got him perfectly positioned, black eyes, a little bit of reflection, and we've got it moving with the camera. Okay, this is really simple, right? It's just doing that. It's doing all of these things. And you can, again, I can tweak this. I can go, oh, I don't know if I totally nailed all of the positioning. Maybe this, you know, mask on the right eye could have been a little bit better. And you can tweak that. It's a little off right now. I could obviously bring that mask back in and move it out. See, it was off just because the software's having a moment. The minute I move it, it jumped right back in line. Okay, I can do that. And I can say, hold on, maybe my mask isn't quite, you know, tweaked the way it should. I need to drag some of the points out, you know, do some adjustments. You can always do that afterwards and make whatever little adjustments you need to isolate. Maybe here's one thing I'm seeing. I don't like the positioning of the reflection. Can you see this reflection on the left? It's kind of sort of a little bit off the left to the middle. This one, just how I had tended to use it. This one right here, the reflection's kind of too far off to the right. I don't love it there. So I could select that spline. And remember how I got this little control option here? I can go, let me just move it a little bit. I think it might do a little better if it's a little closer to the center. And just doing that little tweak, let me move this. Let me deselect it. Will allow it to play through and move it a little bit more towards the middle. And I can change the color, maybe the selection of that up in the upper right here, that little reflection, maybe it's not bright enough. I can go back to the background color node and I can open that up and I can increase some of the brightness on it, make it super bright. You see it getting brighter. I'm just increasing some of the brightness and stuff. And I can go, I'd like it to be a little bit brighter and change some of the controls there. And set it for whatever I want to make it brighter, make it darker, and balance things out. And you can spend a lot of time doing this. But at the end of the day, what we have created here, that was my main footage. That was the input, right? Main footage. We built black and of the left eye, and we drew a mask. We created a much smaller mask that was the reflection, that little reflection in the eye. We merged them together, right? We used a planar tracker that we'd put in line originally, down in line with our main footage, tracked his left eye, let it track through. From the planar tracker, made a transform node that would send that information to this eyeball and connected it into a merge. And then all of this is one eye, and we just did the exact same thing from the other eye. created its own planar tracker. We just duplicated the process. So if you came in here and you went, what are all those nodes? It might be super confusing, but when you go back to your main footage that's just sitting here inside of your timeline, it all looks like one clip. This is why Fusion is so powerful. It just looks like one clip. You hit play, and suddenly this guy's eyes are black, and it's following along with the footage, right? You're seeing it actually play along, follow his eyes, follow the motion of the footage. That's exactly why Fusion is so powerful. You can take things like someone's eyes and turn them black, and you could do even way more. We did a very simple black add a reflection. You could really build this out and make it even like, whatever. You could texture those eyes. You could make them look like carbon fiber. You could really play with some things you could do. Like, I don't love the mix right now. It's a little basic. I could then take this clip, I could go over to the color page and I could say, I don't know if I love the mix. Now that I've got all that effect done in, I put it all together. It's all in one clip. Fusion did all the heavy lifting. Now I can sit there and go, why don't I change the color of all this? Why don't I bring like the contrast up of this whole clip? Maybe I want to change the contrast, or maybe I want to make it a little bit darker, right? And just change some of the values in here so that it has more of the kind of effect that I want it to have. And I can change the color grading of this. I can do all kinds of things, and it's going to affect everything that I've done. All the eyeball stuff I did in Fusion, the entire clip, because I did it inside of Fusion, it allows me to affect the entire clip now, and I can play around and tweak things out, and I can change the entire look of this clip to make it more ominous. I could even say, well, geez, wouldn't it be cool if it had like the whole thing had more of like a bluish, tone to it that's a little more, spooky. I can pull that all over to a little more vampire-ish blue. I could play around with all of these things of how I wanted things to lay out and get a little darker and more spooky. And all of that's doing it. It's affecting the entire clip because the Fusion stuff is all embedded in there, right? And that's always there when I go back to Fusion. It's always right there. I can tweak around with. But as I'm adding these other things like color correction, and maybe I'm going with a more blue or darker thing, it's affecting all of the things that Fusion did too, because they're encapsulated in this clip, right? So now we have this completely different look. You can do anything you want with the color correction. Go red, go blue, go green, go whatever you wanted. But it allows us to do those things to really take your footage to another level and like modify and tweak it using those Fusion nodes that are super, super powerful for masking, for adding color, for adding layers, merging things in. Pretty simple stuff. It's complex, but once you start understanding it, what was the question you had? And if you move all of the merge, so the merge nodes that we did there, just so you understand, you had to use separate merge nodes for a reason. If I go back, you saw like, Daniel, why do you have to keep adding different merge nodes? Like when I built this first eyeball, it was the black layer and then the reflection. And I needed to merge those together into one thing. I wanted that to be sort of like one layer. The eyeball, the left eyeball up here, I needed the black and then the reflection that I created. And that's what this did. The black, mask, and the reflection, smaller mask, set the color, boom. I merged them together, right? With the black in the background here, that's the yellow part. And then the green arrow is the foreground. Merge them together like this. I added a planar transform after that because I wanted to be able to follow the main footage. I wanted the black part of his eye to follow the main footage, and I wanted a little reflection in the eyeball to follow the main footage. If I didn't have them both connected and merged together, then it would have been like the black was moving and then the little reflection was like floating in weird spots all over the footage. So I merged them together, got the planar transform to affect all of this, and then merged it into the main footage again. So you're seeing all these different merge nodes, but it's because they're like insertion points where I want that information to come in to my main footage and stack, just like you would in the main edit page when you start stacking tracks on top of things and you go, I want this to be here and this to be there, and you have more tracks, but it all happens at like based on time. Nodes happen more like it's sort of like a train of information, a signal path, and where would you like that stuff to be inserted into the signal path? So that's where we had so many different nodes. How am I doing? I'm doing good today, my friend. I'm doing all right. I have no complaints. Yeah, there's some other tutorials I did recently on Fusion that I would definitely check out. There's 2 other ones that I did, which was called Fusion for Noobs, and then I did a live stream where I did Fusion and we took text and we made our own graphic text overlays that were moving in, moving out, flipping around. I'll definitely link those in the description and in the pinned comment of this, so that you'll go like, hey, watch this one first, watch this one second, and then try this one. But I'm hoping that what we covered here today made enough sense that you were able to follow along, right? We were able to create a pretty cool effect. We were able to, not a lot of time. I was going kind of slow, right? I took it kind of slowly, but we were able to, we don't need all this crazy blue. I was just showing you what we could do with the color. Oh, I don't want to turn off all the effects. I just want to reset the color. There we go. Maybe we'll darken it up a little bit just to be friendly, right? A little darker. All we did was, we took a piece of footage and we turned the guy's eyes kind of black, made him look like he's been taken over. He's a zombie or a, demon, or he's a vampire, whatever you want him to be. Your choice. And feel free to play with that. Learn these basics. The reason I like doing these live sessions is I got you guys here that you can ask me questions. And I want to be able to get it, to explain things in a way that if you have a question along the way, and if I move too fast, you guys can tell me right on the spot and go like, hey, well, what about, and why did you do that? And we can learn together. Because listen, it's funny. I have the DaVinci Resolve for Noobs, series I'm doing. I'm the noob. I'm the head noob in charge. I tell everybody I'm learning right along with you. So when I figure things out, I make mistakes. You watched me make mistakes right here live and then go, oops, I made a mistake. Then let me go back. I got it on the wrong screen. These are all things that we all deal with. We're all trying to get better at editing. And I love having you guys around for the journey with me, because we're all learning this software together. And the more I learn, the more I'll share. And always feel free to ask any question you want to ask in any video. It doesn't have to be this one. If you have a question, pop into any video and go down in the comments section and just ask the question, because on my end, I read all the comments from inside of YouTube Studio. So it just shows me comments as a list, and it doesn't matter which video they came in on. So I can quickly go through them and go, oh, here's a question. Here's a great question. And you guys have been giving me some of the best questions, like for, hey, can you show me how to do something in Resolve? And you've been really helpful for me finding better shorts to make, because you get great, simple questions that I go, oh, I could answer that in a short. And that would not just help this one person. I bet you would help a lot of people. And it really helps me build that series out. So I really appreciate what it is you do. What was the question? Did I read it wrong, Gabriel? Or Gabrielle? I hope I'm saying your name right. No, I meant move all the merge node instead of moving the reflection off the black eye separately. What do you mean move? Let me read this again. I meant move all the merge nodes separately instead of moving just the reflection. So you're not moving merge nodes, just bring things in. I think you mean transform. If you want to relocate anything that's going on, let me give you an example. We were doing this before when we were here, right? Now, like if I decided that maybe the right eye, the black of the right eye is I don't like where it's at. If like, that's what controls the mask of the black eye, of the right eye that is black. I've got it selected, and you'll see it opens up this little controlling unit right there. That's what's going to move that entire mask as the reference point, okay? They're individual, so it's really not the merge node. What it is the spline node that controls positioning. So if something's slightly out of position, if I were to move that black up above his eyebrow and then replayed from the beginning, it would still follow the tracking along. It would just be above his eye now. You know what I mean? It's still following the tracking information from this transform that we built. I've just repositioned that entire black of his eye in a different spot. So if I wanted it back where it belonged, I could, without having to reinvent the wheel and retrack everything, all I'd have to do is go, hey, no, this needs to come down. That should be like right. It's a little tricky because I'm in so close. Let me get backed out a little bit. Let me go up. That needs to be right on his eye as much as possible. And if I get it in place, that resets the reference point, and now it should follow the whole tracking because it's just sort of repositioned it overall. I don't have to retrack it. And each one of those is different. This one will control the position of the black on the left eye. See that control knob there, not a merge. This one here will control the reflections where it's placed. You don't do them all at once. If I tried to select them all at once, I don't know if I can. Good question. Can I do this? now. See, it defers to the closest one. So if I try to select all of them and move everything at once, it does. I could technically group them and then put them through one singular transform. That's possible. One transform node and then merge them. But I like keeping those things separately so I can make minute adjustments and not have it throw me way, way off. You're looking too far right. Yeah, I probably am. Am I? Am I too far right? I'm looking too far left, right? It is what it is. This is my world. Whoops, I didn't want to blur node. So yeah, just think about these things as you're playing around with this. I really want you guys to kind of follow along with this when you have free time and just do the things that I did. I'm sorry that some of this didn't zoom in as well, but I think there was enough information there that you can follow along pretty well. Give this a shot. See if you can do it. And if you have any questions, okay, you gotta understand, just separate, right? So it's just the splines, Gabrielle, that's moving, Gabriel, that's moving things around. You can change the spline location and push that left, right, up, down, one at a time. If you have any other questions about this, please ask them down in the comment section of this video or any other one, and I'll do my best to answer all those. I really do try to answer all the questions that I can get to, and I really appreciate you guys coming and hanging out for these live streams. It means a lot to me. It allows me to do the thing that I want to do. I have to thank today's sponsor, our good friends, Blackmagic Design, who sponsored today's video. As you know, they recently became a sponsor, and they're part of the Daniel Batal channel now, and they've been so great, sending over some gear, sending over some stuff that I shared with the community. We sent out a couple licenses and we sent out some gear. My pal Jerry has the speed editor and one of the studio licenses now, and hope he's creating a ton of great stuff. We gave some good stuff out. So thank you very much to Blackmagic Design for allowing me to make the kind of content I want to make here. Thank you guys for hanging out with us today, and stay tuned on the channel. We'll be doing a lot more of these. All right, you guys enjoy the rest of your day. Get to editing. Peace.